Okay, we're gonna look at the dollar index here. Really important because is correlated with the movements of many different assets. I look at take a look at the description. You can see my previous video about the dollar, but also look at my latest update about bonds. It looks like they're printing a pretty important low. Doesn't mean it's going to last for the longest time, but it looks like we're at least in a new weekly cycle that's looking to run for a few more weeks. So that will probably have implications for the dollar as well, or at least some correlation. And so looking at the daily chart, you can, and if you don't follow me on Twitter, take a look there. I definitely post more frequently there than I do videos, for sure. Try to keep folks updated on what's happening, what I'm seeing. We had our swing high on day 12 for the daily cycle. That was July 14th. And that's how it works. When you get a swing high, that means you have a candidate for a daily cycle high, right? And that's what I posted on Twitter. We have our swing high once we made this low here. And then once we had follow through the next day, I said, okay, looks like we have our daily cycle low. That's how you kind of tell, right? And then we had more follow through, then some consolidation. And it's like, okay, is it over? And now we actually made I'll zoom in here. We actually made a slight new high today. So it looked like we were going to follow through higher. And now we failed lower. It's Friday, July 22nd, by the way. So we're closing out. It's the last day of the weekly candle. And that's important when we look at the weekly chart. Super important. These nuances, this is the real alpha, folks. And so we are continuing the daily cycle decline. It's day 18, right? So that was day 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, right? Last daily cycle ended on day 20. There's no, like, it doesn't mean every cycle will have the same length, but that just gives you a ballpark. But realize that the cycle before that ended on day 43. The one before that, day 38. So these things can be really long or they can be really short. What you want to do is focus really heavily on the price action itself to give you those cues. And so we are continuing. So you would imagine we're going to get at least another couple of days down, maybe even more protracted. Maybe we get another higher low and then a future move down. But this is where you want to move to the weekly chart to understand how is the weekly cycle shaping up, and more importantly, understanding your multi-time frame analysis. Because we're still in an uptrend here, right? This is a higher high, higher low, higher high. This is still a higher low. Right now, this high low is still higher than this low, right? So we're still uptrending, right? But what does the weekly chart tell us, right? So on the weekly chart, we're in a new weekly cycle, right? Last weekly cycle ended on week 20. So the same way that, this is just, and look at the description for my Cycles 101 video. There's also my mirror post that kind of goes into more depth if you prefer for a read, and with some illustrations in there as well. So we have our swing high on week 6. So this is the same exact principle as that daily swing high I just talked about on day 12, right? So once we went below the low of last week, which was 106.895, we had a swing high. Now we need to see how the week closes, and this is where it's important, right? What did I say? It's Friday, right? So whatever happens today, that's it. That's the whole ball of wax for this weekly candle. And as of right now, unless we get a reversal to end the day, we still have another 8 hours of trading to go. So a lot could happen. Let's be clear. A lot could happen. But if we close around where we are here, we will close as a swing high because we're closing below this low. And that would suggest more potential downside. Like, look at this, right? We close as a swing high, and then we get more downside follow through the next week, right? And so that would signal we may have had a weekly cycle high on week 6, which would be very bearish, because if we only rally for 6 weeks and the weekly cycle is like 20 weeks like this, or maybe even 33 weeks like this one, or 20 weeks like this one, imagine that. If our high comes on week 6 and the cycle doesn't end until week 20, well, you can do the math, right? That means 14 weeks of decline, six weeks of rising. That is very bullish for assets, for risk assets, potentially bullish for crypto, certainly bullish for precious metals. So this is going to be an important one to watch. That's your weekly chart. On the monthly level, the thing that we're watching for is the 3-year cycle. I keep mentioning this on Twitter. Super important. This 3-year cycle started on January 2021. So this month, July, is month 18. You can see we're building a gnarly, vicious wick, vicious upper wick. This is one of your telltale signs of a potential top, right? And it makes sense because once you have this wick, think of this as this is just hard to get through, right? Because now every succeeding candle will just at best be inside this range, right? At worst, it'll fall below the range of here, right? That's what we're really watching for. And so the low for this month is, call it 104.65, right? So if we fall below that level, that creates a monthly swing high. Again, now I hope you're following, right? You have swing highs at every level. So the daily swing high cascaded to create a weekly swing high. And now the weekly swing high may cascade to create a monthly swing high, which could signal that we've begun to descend into the 3-year cycle low, which would happen in January 2024. I would say it seems more likely that the dollar will run higher than that we'll get our top, let's say more like month 25, month 27, like some of these past cycles. But anything goes, right? In some sense, that's why price action is so important. We can't know the whims of, the Federal Reserve and all of the different machinations, but we can follow the price, right? We can follow price and volume and understand what is the big money doing based on how the price is moving. And the way this wick is building, it's not looking good. The thing that I will note, though, is that because these are such small percentages, the dollar can make really big moves really quickly. And so that's why, something that looks like a really ominous situation chart-wise for the dollar can reverse very quickly, both bullish and bearish, because it can drop let's say 2 or 3%, which is a massive move for a currency, and will just erase a bullish or bearish chart pattern almost instantly. And knowing that we have all of next week, and again, the Fed meeting on Wednesday, super important, July 27th, Fed meeting, we could have this wick fill out, right, to the top, we could have it mostly get erased, and then we get follow through, right? So you have to have your head on the swivel when you're dealing with the dollar, because those changes can happen very, very quickly. But right now we're in a bearish posture for sure. And you could think as your minimum, we'll probably at least check back to the 10-week moving average. At this point, that's all the way down at around the 104 and a half level, which corresponds with potentially that flirting with that monthly swing high. So will be very interesting to watch. I'll definitely be giving regular updates on this channel, but also, if you don't, please follow me on Twitter. I definitely post on there more often, as I said, but certainly subscribe to this channel. I'll keep doing these more in-depth videos to give you a sense of what's happening with the price action, what we can expect.